Welcome back in, DJ and PK. DJ's off today. Riley Jensen sitting in. Joining us now is a guy we want to introduce to you. His name is Cole Bagley. He is going to be covering the Utah Hockey Club for us for KSL Sports. So you'll be reading him, KSLSports.com. You'll be hearing him on the air talking about the team, giving us insight for us hockey novices. I used to, way back when, before Cole was born, know a lot about hockey. I covered hockey when I was living in California, but that's been a long time ago. And then I moved up here and nobody wanted to talk about it. So I need to get up to speed more so than I was back then, and we've got a great guy who can do it. Cole, we want to introduce you to our audience right here on the DJ and PK show, and tell us, man, I was talking to you the other day about your background in hockey, because you're a dude who knows the sport in and out.
Yeah, so my hockey career really started with the 2002 Winter Olympics. My dad took me to preliminary round game, USA and Russia. Watched the first period, stood up, 6 years old, turned to my dad, said, "This is the sport for me. I want to play this."
Nice. You believe in miracles.
Yep. Great movie, and great event. Great thing that
and then
took place.
Go through to where you played it and all that stuff and where you are now.
Yeah, so my dad, he called one of his best friends who's Canadian, as you would, because if anybody's going to know where to play hockey, it's Canadian.
For sure.
So I got involved in the Salt Lake County Recreation League, played a little bit of Junior Grizzlies, which is like a travel type team, which is like, that's where, like, if you want to play professionally, like, travel hockey's where it's at. Wasn't very good, so I was just an alternate. But then played high school at Brighton, and played all 4 years there. Actually led the Utah High School Association in penalty minutes my junior year, so
yes,
was a bit of a goon.
We got an enforcer here.
I like this. All of a sudden, my ears perked up. I like this guy.
I liked to hit. It was a lot of fun, and sometimes it got me in trouble. A lot of times it got me in trouble. But, yeah, so hockey is just a big part of who I am. I've followed the sport, since I was 6 years old. Followed the NHL devoutly. Followed the Pittsburgh Penguins for the most part, because when I was coming into the sport, Sidney Crosby was starting to make a name for himself, and so I've watched Sid his whole career. All his Stanley Cups and goals and assists. Playing in the Winter Classic in 2008. So hockey's a big part of my life, and couldn't be more excited to have an NHL team here in Utah, which is something I never thought was going to happen, but now it's here, and it's gonna be a big part of our culture here in Salt Lake.
I think so. When you
just shifting gears, and thanks for sharing your background, because I think that gives you a lot of credibility. Obviously, this has been a team that has struggled in Phoenix. What are some of the things that Ryan Smith and the organization have put together, or what else do they need to put together to give these players the support so this can be a winning and successful ball club for years to go? What is
club? They don't play with balls.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. What are they doing, and what do they need to do? What are the other pieces that they need?
I mean, they're already doing it. If you looked at just the summer that they had, a lot of experts, a lot of analysts are giving them the grade of an A, and they should be, because they had a great draft. They got a lot of good talent. They had 2 first-round guys that I think are going to be a big part of the franchise for years to come. I don't know that they're going to see the ice necessarily this season or next. It could take some time, which is normal. I mean, they're 18-year-old kids, right? Like, they're probably not quite there yet, but give it some time, and T.J. Ginla and Cole Bowden are going to be, very key players, especially offensively. And then you look at the trades and the acquisitions that they were able to make. People need to understand, getting Mikhail Sergachev is a huge deal.
That's where I was going to go.
It's huge. It's like back in the day when the Jazz went and got Carlos Boozer. This is a guy that is very, very talented. And a little bit of background on that, the front office went shopping for a defender. They said, we've got young players and we've got draft picks. And Tampa said, all right, we've got Sergachev. Here you go. So they've got a top 10 defender coming in who is going to be the number one guy. And that, to me, is the whole reason that they did so well this summer, is they needed defense. They needed better defense. Scoring goals wasn't a big problem for them last year. Stopping them was. And so to go and get a guy like Sergachev, and then to go and get a guy like John Marino from New Jersey, It's another talented defenseman. And then Ian Cole, who's just a veteran. He's about 35 years old, but he's won a Stanley Cup. He won with Pittsburgh back in 2017, I believe. So they went out, they got defensive talent, they got veteran talent on that on the defense, and I think, to me, that's going to help this team a lot. And I think they're going to do a lot better than they did last year. I think they're going to surprise some people.
Cole Bagley, who is our new Utah Hockey Club insider for KSL Sports, joining us. Yeah, you look at what's been out there, and you just name the names that caught my attention the most because of what the team needed. I have a background in Phoenix, so I followed the team to an extent. Not certainly like the way I did the Jazz, but was aware of it, and then all the stuff and about them potentially moving, and, people would ask me, who was it? My sister, who lives there, calls me. Her hairdresser, like in February, was all depressed because she's hearing, ask your brother, are they getting our hockey team? And I said, well, we'll see, man, possibility, I mean, it was more about, my concern was more about the Phoenix ownership and all that stuff and how that was going to work, and we know how it turned out. But you look at this team, and they want to make a splash, right?
Yeah. Set
the tone right away. And then you look down the road, and you saw a Vegas team that got together so quickly, and I've had to be in Vegas for a lot of time for a personal reason, so the excitement in that desert city was just off the charts, man. The Golden Knights were everywhere, and they had success early. Now, you just said it. Now, they had the big-time success early. You think the team will surprise people. To what extent is that surprise?
A lot of people expect this team to be a bottom three team. I don't think that's the case. I've said it a couple times. I think their ceiling is a first-round exit in the playoffs, but that's great. This is a team that has not made the playoffs very many times over the last 2.5 decades.
Right.
I think 2-3 times. And so I think surprising people means competing every night, upsetting teams that that some may consider very, very, very good, who could just come into Salt Lake and waltz their way to an easy victory. That's not going to happen. I think these guys are going to compete. I think they're going to have some upset type wins. I think they're going to have good stretches, and I think they are going to compete for a playoff spot. And you don't want to, if this team does make that playoffs, this is not a team that you want to face in the first round if you're a top seed, because they got nothing to lose. They got a lot of guys with chips on their shoulders. It's a new group. It's a lot of guys that are trying to prove something. It's a lot of young talent that's looking to assert themselves. And, injuries are really big factors in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, there's been a lot of teams who were favorites to win who had a couple guys go out in the first, second round and end up losing. I think Edmonton was kind of an example of that, as well as last year, the Panthers, Florida. And so, to me, being a surprise this year means they're making the playoffs, which I could see happening.
Well, they weren't that far away.
No, I mean, really the tipping point is when those rumors started going around.
Yeah, right.
They lost 14 games in a row.
Yeah.
They were in a playoff spot for a good portion of last season. Then the rumors start circulating, which, of course, that's going to have an impact. You don't know what's happening. You don't know your future. You may be headed to Salt Lake City, a place you've never been before. They lost 14 games in a row, and that was the nail in the coffin. That was it. From there, they didn't do very well.
Right, and then it became like a farewell tour.
Yeah.
In a sense of this is the end, playing in that arena over there on the ASU campus. And here they'll be in the city, and the community will rally. As far as you mentioned some names, and those are veteran guys. You talk about the young guys. Tell us about what we should know from a kid like Clayton Keller, who looks like he's got stardom written all over him as far as where he can go. I don't know how much you've interacted with these guys just yet. You will, obviously, going forward. But tell us about a kid like him.
Yeah, I haven't had very many interactions yet, but I've been watching a lot of film, studying up on these guys, looking at their stats. And then, Jay Stevens is doing a great job. He's had a lot of these guys on podcasts, so I've listened to the ones that he's done.
And I've been trying to listen to those too, yeah.
Yeah. Clayton's awesome. The guy can just flat out score. Doesn't matter where he is on the ice. whether it's slap shots. He does really well driving to the net. I think he's got good speed, good body control. He protects the puck really well. So he gets to the net. I mean, he just has that X factor. He knows how he can. I think he can see things 2-3 steps ahead of how they before they happen. So if you look up his highlights within the first 2 minutes, you're gonna watch him score in 8 or 9 different ways, and that's really impressive to me. But what's also really, really good about a player like him is he was an all-star last year. He had 33 goals, 43 assists. I like that assist number a lot because that means he's not a guy that's just focused on himself. He's focused on team success. He's finding his teammates, and he's recognizing, hey, I'm pulling 2-3 defenders when I'm entering the zone. I need to move the puck, and he does. And one of his partners in crime is Nick Schmaltz.
Yeah.
This is a guy that scored like 20 goals last year. I watched most of the goals that he scored. Probably half or more of them were on assists from Keller. Those two just work really well, and I would kind of anticipate that Nick maybe takes another step forward this season. Maybe he gets up towards 30 goals. That would be great. If you're getting 65 goals between those two,
Your two forwards.
Yeah, it's going to do a lot of good things.
Speaking about, you grew up here in Utah playing. Obviously, there's going to be an impact to the community. They're building a new facility at the Southtown Mall. All these opportunities for kids to fall in love with the sport. What do you think that impact will be? Is that going to increase fanhood? What does that picture look like going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we already started to kind of the Olympics obviously had a huge impact. I was one of those kids that fell in love with the sport. A lot of the guys that I played with were very similar, kids that had finally been exposed to hockey that decided to start playing it. And then I think we saw another surge of that with the Golden Knights. I mean, there's a lot of hockey fans here that I think came to be because of Vegas. And, they held the Frozen Fury here for a couple seasons. I was able to provide coverage for that a couple years ago. And there were a lot of people that drove up from Vegas, but there's a lot of people that were just Vegas fans because it was it was a close team. They made a lot of noise, and so I think we're going to see an even more people who fall in love with the sport of hockey. I mean, we're a winter sports town. We got some of the greatest snow on earth. We've had the Olympics. We're getting them again. So I think people are going to attach themselves to hockey very quickly because it's a fantastic sport. I mean, when I was growing up and playing in high school, we'd wear our jackets to school. It's not a sanctioned sport, so
right.
It's just a club. But we represented the school's name, and we'd wear our jackets or our jerseys to school, and people would be like, "What is that?" I'd be like, "Well, I play hockey." They're like, "I didn't know we had a hockey team." You're like, "Well, come out and watch a game." 9 out of 10 times, everybody'd be like, "This is the greatest sport. I'm coming back to every game. This is better than football. This is better than basketball," because, in my opinion, it is. I mean, you think about what they're doing out there while skating on ice. I mean, it's a bunch of guys who are trying to, smack a small little puck around, with sticks while trying to avoid being absolutely smashed on ice. It's a crazy sport to watch. It's a lot of fun, and people get really into it. I mean, hockey culture, NHL culture is unlike anything else, in my opinion. And so, I think we're going to have a lot of kids who fall in love with the sport, who want to play, and I would expect those rec leagues are going to start seeing a significant uptick in terms of participants, which is fantastic.
Cole Bagley, you are a new hockey club insider for KSL Sports. You'll be able to read him at kslsports.com. You'll be able to hear him on the air. Tell us about. You talk about depth, in the college football teams. Our starters can match anybody, but we got to have depth. And then they have injuries, and you look at BYU last year, and Utah had injuries. They got better depth. But, a lot of BYU's lack of success is when guys went down, they didn't have players to step up. Hockey, that I can argue that depth might be the most important because of all the switching and substituting that they do in this sport. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the NHL playoffs are a lot of fun because it's not like the NBA. Like pretty much every year, you look at the NBA playoffs and you know who's going to win for the most part.
Yeah, I got you.
Like this season, we all knew it was going to be Boston. And sometimes teams surprise you. But with the NHL, it's different every year. mean, yeah, there's teams that go back to back, but it's really hard to do that because of what you just said. When you think about the amount of time that a star player like a Sidney Crosby or a Nathan McKinnon or a Connor McDavid is on the ice, he's lucky to play 50 or 60% of the game because your shifts, so you're jumping the boards and you're on the ice for at most like 2 minutes, maybe. They more so prefer 60 to 90 seconds because you're going 100 miles an hour and the ice is big. And so in terms of depth, yeah, you're right. You hit it right on the head. You got to have a lot of depth. If you don't have that depth, injuries start piling up. These guys get gassed, and you run out of steam, and you're not able to compete. So yeah, I mean, you have to have depth. You got to be able to go to your second, third, fourth lines, and to depend on them to produce and to compete. And so, yeah, depth is huge.
One thing that I remember from being around hockey players in the 90s, before I moved up here, was how easy they were to deal with and how willing they were to interact with you as a media member and then in the community. I played in a softball league that had some Kings players on the team. Jim Fox was their radio analyst, or maybe TV analyst, and he was on the team. And they just were out in the community more. And, I've heard about this over the years from longtime Jazz season ticket holders when they first got here, that the fans would interact with the players. And now it's like it just doesn't happen. Speak to the effect that they will have in the community, these guys, because unless it's changed, these guys were more prominently displayed in their community. And maybe it's because outside of Canada and a lot of cities that they're in, they need to sell the sport more because there might be a sport that has a higher profile in the U.S. And obviously we've got the Jazz and we've got the colleges here. But my thought is that if you get into this, you'll be able to get to know these guys in a manner that we haven't had here at the professional level in a long time.
Yeah, it's, again, the culture of hockey is just fantastic. And I think it has a lot to do with the love and the passion of the game is still there. I don't think it's big-time corporate that runs the NHL. I think, like you said, these guys have to kind of sell themselves. If you're aside from some of the big hockey markets, Original Six, teams in Canada, they have to sell themselves because football is king, and there's the NBA, there's Major League Baseball, there's college football. Like hockey it's come a long way, but it's not quite there yet, and so a lot of these guys aren't necessarily recognized where they go.
Right.
I mean, if you see LeBron James walking down the street, you know exactly who he is.
Yeah.
If you see Lauri Markkanen, you probably know who he is.
Sure.
Whereas these guys, it's like they just look like regular people, and I think they're really, really good people. I've interacted with a lot of hockey players throughout my entire life. I've met some hockey players, professional players, and yeah, they're really good guys. And a lot of it, like I said, comes back to the love of the game. Growing up, when you're out there playing with your friends, you imagine what it's like to win the Stanley Cup, and it goes so deep, and there's such a love and passion for the game, and that still exists in the NHL. It's not just about making millions of dollars. There's no divas in the NHL. And yeah, I expect these guys to get out into the community, and I think it's a breath of fresh air because things were not going well in Arizona.
Right.
Outside of the diehards that were showing up, people didn't really care for the team. I mean, they could never get legislature to pass.
A lot of it was ownership, yeah.
Yeah, they couldn't get legislature ever to pass to build a new arena. They show up here and they've got one that's twice the size, and our legislature is very interested in growing that. And so, yeah, these guys are excited. I mean, and I think we showed them like, hey, at that welcoming event, how many people did they put?
Right.
In the Delta Center.
When's camp open?
Mid-September.
And then they'll have some exhibition. Are they home in the first game?
Yes, play Chicago.
And when's that? Because
October 8th.
October 8th.
Oh, it's here.
Yep. Right across the street, Delta Center.
Yeah, so that's 2 months from now. We'll be get going, so you got another couple of weeks, and then your life will be taken over.
Yeah. It's going to be fantastic. I mean, a dream come true to be working, here at KSL Sports for the NHL.
Sure. There you go. That is our new hockey insider, Cole Bagley. Thank you for joining us, Cole. We'll look forward to your coverage all season long here on 97.5, the KSL Sports station, and then obviously KSLSports.com where you can go. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, anytime.
All right. Cole Bagley coming up next. We'll get you caught up on what you may have missed. Stay with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.